Welcome to the ALZ Talks. I'm Anna Sampley, Senior Associate Director of Community Programs and Services with the Alzheimer's Association. The mission of the Alzheimer's Association is to lead the way to end Alzheimer's and all other dementia by accelerating global research, driving risk reduction and early detection, and maximizing quality, evidence-based care and support. ALZ Talks webinars provide education, information, news, and resources on a variety of dementia and caregiving topics. The webinar series is supported by Procter Gamble and is organized and arranged by the Alzheimer's Association. Today we'll be talking about living well with a new diagnosis. A dementia diagnosis does not define who you are. In working with people living with dementia, especially those who are newly diagnosed and in the early stages, we often hear, "I'm still me." Staying engaged in meaningful activities supports cognitive and emotional health, and I'm joined today by two leaders of the Alzheimer's Association, Carrie and Leah Farley, who are here to share their stories and how they chose to embrace life and live well after a dementia diagnosis. Leah Farley is a former counselor and nonprofit founder who spent over 20 years supporting children, families, and women rebuilding their lives. Diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment in 2023, she now serves on the Alzheimer's Association National Board and completed her year on the 2024-2025 National Early Stage Advisory Group. Carrie built a 35-year career in finance, leading teams and mentoring with passion. After noticing cognitive changes, she was diagnosed with MCI in 2023. She now serves on the local Alzheimer's Association board and the 2025-2026 National Early Stage Advisory Group. Carrie and Leah, thanks so much for being here with us today.
Happy to be here.
Carrie, I'm going to start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about your path to diagnosis?
Absolutely. So for me, it started with forgetfulness, and it wasn't the small kind that you can brush off, although at home it wasn't as bad. At home I was constantly losing things, my keys, checks, credit cards, my phone. You'd hear like ding, ding, ding like 1,000 times a day because I would need to find my phone. But at work it was different. It was much scarier. I led a large department of a couple hundred people, and I spent a lot of time. The things that I loved to do the most were coaching and strategy meetings and just executing on our goals. And those, coaching became so difficult. I couldn't hold thoughts together. So that as I was coaching, at the end, you come up with a strategy and a plan on how to get better. And I couldn't remember enough from the session to move forward. And things like emails, something as simple as typing an email became almost impossible. I would have this conversation in my head, like, you got this, it's going to take 2 seconds. And 45 minutes later, I'd be looking at a blank screen. So ultimately, I talked to my doctor. My doctor told me what many of us hear, which is, right, you have anxiety, you have a lot of work stress, and you're aging, but you're fine, right? You're fine. But I wasn't fine. And as time went on, it just continued to get worse. And then one day I was talking to my boss about a national transformation that we had been working on for months. And I burst into tears because I couldn't remember any of the details. And so I just had told him, I don't know what's wrong with me, but I don't remember. And so we made the decision together that day that I would go on a leave of absence to figure out what was going on. When I explained to my doctor what was going on, he didn't understand. He got very upset and told me that if I had Alzheimer's, I wouldn't even know. My family would have to bring me in because I didn't have a clue. So, it was there. It was pretty devastating. But thankfully, with the support of my company, I went and got a second opinion. I got medical advice. I went to Mass General, and it's there I got my diagnosis.
And I mean, obviously a lot of self-advocacy going on, right? Like being told something's not going on, but having some validation both in your workspace and family. Can you just tell us a little bit, what was that time like for you?
It was, well, it was devastating, right? Like you have, my career meant so much to me. The people I loved, the people that I supported, and I felt like I was letting them down every day. And that's a really hard place to be. Like, you know that you used to be good at something and now you can't do it. And so it was hard. I would say the advocacy like was probably one of the most important things, because my doctor on more than one occasion told me that I was fine, but I kept pushing it because I knew that something was wrong. And it wasn't until, unfortunately, things sort of fell apart that we really moved forward and got serious about a diagnosis.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a really important part because we hear often when people have receive a dementia diagnosis, some people aren't aware, right? They're not aware of those changes, and yet in the earlier stages, when there are some individuals that do, and which is why, like, yeah, this isn't just old aging, and yet sometimes we want to hear that, right? And Leah, I
Mhm.
remember you shared that with me also early on. It's kind of like, oh, okay, good, I don't have this, so I can move on. And then you realize, in not too long of a time that something is going on and you want to get to the bottom of it. So I'll turn to you now, Leah, and ask if you're willing to share a little bit about your diagnosis experience with us and what that looked like.
Sure. So at the age of 57, I was loving my life because I was where I wanted to be. I was proud of the work that I was doing, and I felt like I was a really good leader in my businesses. Then I started having problems. The first thing was words. I would be explaining something to my client and say, and so what we need to do is, that thing where until I come up with a word. And so that was alarming. And then I would sometimes come in and not know the name of my client. And that's big. So I went to the doctor, and they said, you seem fine, but we'll send you for a referral to a neurologist. And that neurologist didn't didn't take it very seriously. He said, you are getting older, and you could it's probably it could be menopause, it could be stress, but you're fine. And so I said, okay, I'll just do more yoga and be more mindful, and maybe things will get better. But over the next 2 years, things got worse, and I started getting lost on the way home from work, or forgetting whole conversations, or implementing a policy in my building that I forgot, and then had people scratching their head and irritated with me because I didn't understand why people were doing the things they were doing. Um, that's when I went back, and this neurologist was still saying that I was fine, but did meet the dignity of doing the tests. And that's when I had a full workup, and that's when she called me on the phone and said, it looks like it's consistent with Alzheimer's. So we're just going to cancel your next test that we were talking about. And if you want, you can get a second opinion. So I did. I went to Mass General, just like Carrie, and that's when I was given the diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment, likely due to Alzheimer's. So I had to close my businesses, and I was really devastated. It was a dark time for me because everything that I loved, everything is almost my identity. I was a clinical social worker, an advocate, and immediately it was done. And I was alone trying to figure out what to do next.
Yeah. Well, and part of that, after, you know, having it settle a little bit within yourself, right, and within your close loved ones, what was it like to share your diagnosis with your family and friends? What did that look like for you, Leah?
Well, it's funny because people my family and my friends didn't notice it as much as the people that I worked with.
Yeah.
Because, it's higher level things you're doing at work. I mean, and so they would say, well, you seem fine. And people, I lose my keys. Do I have Alzheimer's? So, in their own way, they were trying to be supportive and like probably ease my worries about it. And at the same time, it felt a little invalidating because this is my reality now, and people are still saying, "You're fine."
Yeah. Yeah. And how about for you, Carrie, in sharing your diagnosis, did anybody say something that provided relief or the opposite? Did somebody say something that was like, that was not the right thing to say?
Well, I think a little bit of all over the place. So my immediate family and my friends, the people that live with me and were close had been with me throughout the whole process. So so they were in the loop the whole way, and I had a lot of support from them, and that was a blessing. Um, but I took a little bit of a different approach. For me, it got harder after that. Like there was my close family, and then I would like test it, like
Mm.
we had a childhood friend that was a friend of my brother's that we grew up with, and he was doing work at my house, and just randomly I said, oh, I'll just, I just spit it out and told Paul. And it was awkward. I look back, I'm like, wow, that was super awkward. But I think like for me, telling him was like he had no skin in the game. My telling him what was going on with me wasn't going to hurt him. And so, and he hugged me and said he was sorry, and that, I sounded great. He did what, what people do in awkward moments, I guess. But I think beyond that, it was, I just, when the time felt right, I would tell people. And for the most part, they were very supportive, but I got a ton of what Leah did, right? It's, oh, you're fine. You look great. Well, you sound great. Like I lost my keys, the same thing. Like maybe I should be checked. I tried to reframe my thoughts to have that not be like make me mad, because they weren't doing it to be mean. They were just doing it to make me feel better. But I think for me, the hardest part in my diagnosis or telling somebody was my dad. And I didn't tell my dad. My dad was the very last person that I told. And I didn't tell him until I started speaking more publicly, because my mom had Alzheimer's, and he spent 10 years plus like loving her like crazy, by her side, caring for her. And my God, the last 5 years sitting in a nursing home, holding her hand every day for hours, every day, watching her slip away. And so the thought of telling him that his daughter, that looks just like his mom, my mom, had a similar diagnosis, just the thought of telling him killed me. And then I decided it wasn't fair to him. He would want to be part of this process and this journey. And so I told him, and it was hard, but we're good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and clearly both of you, like with the diagnosis, your careers, your families, you've mentioned everything that you were, what you knew your identity to be kind of was taken, right? Or stopped in some way. And yet you're here, and my introductions introduced you both as leaders of the association, and you're very outspoken about your diagnosis and your journey. What was the turning point? And whether it was one incident, or Carrie, as you mentioned, like you were testing things out and over time became stronger and more confident, in sharing. But if you could speak to the turning point in which, after you processed,
Mhm.
or what you've chosen to do with your life now, and I'll start with you, Carrie.
All right. So it is like you get that the immediate diagnosis, and you get this like, oh my gosh, I'm not crazy. And then immediately you realize that everything that you once thought you had was taken away from you, right? My future, my job, there's so many things I felt were taken away. And went into a funk, and my sister-in-law sent me a video of a woman from Rhode Island on a news station doing an interview. And she had been diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. And I was watching her, and I was like, oh my God, like I connected. I'm like, oh my God, she's just like me. She's young. She's not like the vision that we all have. And she was talking about the Alzheimer's Association and being able to continue and living her life. And so I hung up the phone and I called the Alzheimer's Association, and they invited me to something called a research and rally session. And it gave me such hope. Like it gave me such hope. Like I went on that call and I was watching the person speaking who was just like me. He had cognitive impairment, and I realized that there were a lot of people that were just like me, and you just don't know it. You don't know it because, like, let's face it, we don't stand out. And so I left there feeling like there was hope and there was promise and support and research. And I think that that was the turning point for me, was that knowledge that this is not the end of my life. And it prompted me to get involved.
Yeah. And Leah, how about you? A turning point? Was it a process? Is there an event that you can think of that made you lean into what this new identity looks like for you?
Absolutely. 2023 was a dark time for me that summer, and I was not very. I was angry and just just grieving, and I had a chance meeting with Carrie, and that was the beginning of me finding a new normal. We went together to it was an early stage meeting in Massachusetts. And when I walked into that big conference room full of people that just looked like regular people sitting at a conference room table, articulate and passionate and hopeful, I said, "Oh, okay, there's something for me still," and that started me, finding my new normal. I found a community, I found some purpose, something I could do that was, advocating was my life, and this was something that I could do. And it gave me opportunities to look for joy. So that was when things started to change.
Yeah. And just because I know the two of you, I am going to ask if you can share how you came to know Carrie. So, because yeah, if you'd share that a little bit about that story, either one of you.
Well, you can start, and I'll
Okay.
end, because you're
Okay.
the beginning of this, Carrie.
All right. So I was shortly after my diagnosis, in that reeling stage where you're in a funk. I was in a restaurant with my daughter, Gabby, and I heard these two women talking about their beautiful friend that was having to close her practice, and I heard words like Alzheimer's and clinical trials, and I couldn't unhear it. And so I just couldn't help myself. I went over at the end and just introduced myself and said, you know what, it sounds like your friend is going through a lot of what I'm going through, and would you mind taking my information and passing it on to your friend? And they were lovely, and they did. And so I'll let Leah take it from there.
Yeah. So my friend Nancy, she calls me and she says, "I hope you're not going to be mad because I was talking about you." And she always has my back, so I knew it probably wasn't smack, she's anyway. So she said, we met this lovely woman at lunch, and she said that she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's too, and gave me her phone number in case you wanted to chat, and I did, of course. So I don't know, I think I emailed or texted or something. I think I texted. Anyway, we got together, and ever since then we've been having a grand time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So even in these serendipitous moments, right? Not knowing, but leaning into that gut, Carrie said, I couldn't unhear it, even though yeah, how important that is to build a connection. So it sounds like clearly peer support has been helpful to you, right? Connecting with people that are going through this, that you feel can connect and relate to your experience. Is there any professional support that you would recommend to people also going through who have been recently diagnosed? Leah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I
Yeah.
realize I'm not looking. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, no, no
Yeah.
worries. So yeah, I've always been I know as a therapist, I believe in therapy, and so I've continued on with therapy. I meet with my therapist like once a month. It is a great place to have support around changes that happen that you don't want to like tell everybody, hey, yeah, I forgot this or I did that, because each one is like a little insult, and it's nice to go and be able to talk about it and not worry that you're going to hurt your family or have them worry more. So I continue to do that, and I also, am involved in it started off as a support group, and now we carried it on after as a friend support group, and we meet weekly and talking to other people, laughing about the crazy things that happen when you when you have a bad day, crying about it sometimes, but just knowing that there are more people out there like you that get it, even though your journey's different, there's a lot of similarities, and those two things have been really helpful.
Thanks. And how about for you, Carrie? Any resources that you have found either informally or professionally that have worked for
Yeah,
you?
both, actually, both. It's very similar. So I've had a therapist for years. And, I actually started with her at the recommendation of my doctor, my PCP, who said I should see a therapist because I had medical anxiety. And she was amazing. She is amazing. So she is still very much a part of my life. And, she helped me go through the process. She listened to me, and she helped me kind of change my narrative. And when someone told me, when my doctor was like, you're fine, she listened to me and she took what I was saying as my truth. And she helped me with that. And she was just such an important sounding board throughout the process. And then after my diagnosis, even more so, helping me navigate and keeping my thoughts focused on the life here and now. Because I will tell you, it's not the doomsday. Like when I got the diagnosis, you automatically go to this place, like right to the end, right? The vision that we all see of what someone in later stage Alzheimer's is. And she taught me that that's not where we are. And she helped me to learn acceptance. And that made a really big difference. And then, Leah mentioned the support group. There are peeps. We are on the same support group. Monday night, 4:30, we're busy. And there's not a whole lot that I wouldn't do or that I would do to miss that group. I wouldn't want to miss that group is what I'm trying to say. But it is, you laugh, and sometimes you cry, and it's just normal. It can be just normal, but you feel like there's nothing that you have to worry about saying, because you're not going to worry somebody. Often they'll be able to just support you in ways like understanding or laughing.
Yeah, laughter is important. So clearly you have this peer support, you seek professional help and support when needed. But also, the topic today was living well with Alzheimer's and dementia. And, I'm not sure, I think it was Carrie who mentioned shifting your narrative, right? Which is hard to do. And sounds like you did definitely process the devastation, the frustration that was a part of it, but then your narrative shift, we've talked about this turning point. So what are other things that you do? And we'll start with you, Leah, to maintain or improve your quality of life on a daily basis. What do you do?
Yeah, I already had a pretty good eating pattern, my diet was pretty good, but I've started to embrace more of the elements of the mind diet, which introduces it's a Mediterranean diet that introduces superfoods, which, that's just can't hurt, might help. I started when I was working, I did neglect my exercise because I was too busy, and now I have plenty of time, and I'm back into doing my workouts. I use VR, and I love it because there's music and you have your own little coach there, and you can do boxing and flow. Anyway, it's fun.
What
And
is, you
so
said VR,
yeah,
VR, Leah? Is it virtual
virtual
reality?
reality, yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because,
Oh,
I
fun.
don't really, going to a gym's not my thing, but I wouldn't say I have the ability to just, come up with exercises. So it's
Yeah.
nice to have that.
Yeah.
So those are the two like body things. Then cognitively, I use an app. There's all different ones. I use Brain HQ, and it's hard and it's frustrating, and so it must be working, right? Because
Yeah.
anything that you don't like usually is good for you. So I'm doing. And I didn't need, when you're working, you don't need cognitive stimulation because you have plenty. And so when you're at home, even if you stay active, which that's another thing I do, I make sure I meet with at least one person outside my home every week. That's my rule. Usually it's more because I'm trying to find things to do. So staying connected, it was really important too. Um, so yeah, I think those are all things that are good for you no matter what's going on in your life. But, I just amped them up a little bit.
Amped him up. Good, nice. How about for you, Carrie?
So, like Leah, for me, exercise has always been part of my life. So, exercise, I eat well. I've made some changes. Um, After, all of a sudden one day you're retired and your cognitive stimulation is goes right down. And so, I challenge myself to do more things that challenge my brain. And at the in a conversation with Leah, I did the same app, and I will agree the darn thing's pretty frustrating. But I do crosswords. I do a lot of things that challenge my brain. I think one of the things that I've really focused on is better sleep habits. And
Mhm.
although I'm a late night person, I get 7 to 8 hours of sleep. And when I was working, I got sometimes not even five. So
Mhm.
I think regular sleep habits and the social aspect is really that has been really important to me. And I will say, if you're working, regardless of where you are, enjoy those social relationships now because if you never have time and they're awesome. They're a beautiful thing. I spend a lot of time with friends and family and out doing things that um, just make life better.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I have one more question for the two of you that I think will kind of help us wrap it all together. Obviously, going through the experience of being diagnosed and going through the process, what advice would you have for someone who has been recently diagnosed, with a dementia diagnosis or mild cognitive impairment diagnosis? And I'll
Um,
start with Carrie.
okay. I would say that the first thing that I will say is it is okay to be devastated, but don't live there because it's really easy to get sucked into the dark thoughts. And what I think both of us have learned along the way, and many people have learned along the way, is life still has beauty. Like it is a beautiful journey. It's just a different journey. And if you're so focused on what may happen or will happen down the road that you forget to enjoy every moment, then you're missing out. Like these moments that we have today are gifts, um, and just enjoy them. One of the other things that I had looked at that I wish had been there earlier on for me because it came out fairly recently was the My ALZ journey. And shortly after my diagnosis, a little while after, I would say that app for me, that connection that I felt with that woman in Rhode Island, there are a lot of faces of people with Alzheimer's of all ages, of all that talk about the journey and they talk about how normal life can be and how it changes. And for me, that was I think a huge resource.
Huge resource for somebody nice. Yeah, the Miles Journey app. Yeah. Thanks, Carrie. How about for you, Leah? Advice you would give to somebody who's been recently diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment or dementia?
I agree that you allow yourself the time to grieve a little bit. Allow yourself to have your feelings. You don't have to have toxic positivity and bam, everything's fixed, right? And then figure out how to get your new normal going. And, the opportunities have joy, find purpose, and get hope, because you can live a long time with purpose, hope, and joy. And so then also it's not the end, it's a different journey, and being in the moment. There's beautiful moments every day, every day of every year, and so look for those. And my ALZ journey, I was lucky enough to be part of the beta testing. And what I'd say is, I wish that anytime anybody got a diagnosis, they got the 24/7 number for Alzheimer's Association and the My ALZ Journey app as a going away gift, so that you could, because there is on the app there is a community, and it gives you a roadmap of the things that you have to navigate, and sooner than later would be good to have it. So yeah, there's a lot of more good.
A lot of more good to come. And I'm going to take that tagline: purpose, hope, and joy. Purpose, hope, and joy, right? And re-identifying. Carrie and Leah, thank you so much for sharing your time today, sharing your insights on what it means to live well with a new diagnosis, and your wisdom. I personally appreciate you so greatly for joining us today and sharing with ALZ Talks and all those who are tuning in. To all those joining this discussion, we're so glad you're able to make time for this program today, to hear from two leaders of the association who continue to help us fine-tune our programs, products, and services. The Alzheimer's Association is available for anyone who has questions or needs support. Both Leah and Carrie had spoken about the 24/7 helpline, which is available to anyone at 1-800-272-3900. Specialists are available around the clock, 365 days a year, and can provide assistance in over 200 languages, thanks to our bilingual staff and translation services. They can help with things like finding programs and support, speaking confidently with master's level clinicians for decision-making support, and education on issues that families face every day. They both talked about the My ALZ Journey app, which we are so proud to introduce, which is a free and accessible app designed for newly diagnosed early stage individuals and their care partners to understand what it takes to get through those first steps, to process what you're going through, and then to find, as Leah said, purpose, hope, and joy. Created for those who already use apps, it personalizes guidance, education, planning tools, activities, and local resources all in one place. By delivering the right information at the right time, it helps users navigate their diagnosis, stay connected, and take action with confidence. Additionally, our website, ALZ.org, has a wealth of information, including information about taking care of yourself, planning for your future, available treatments, and a wide variety of tools and resources like our Community Resource Finder, Education Center, or ALZ Connected, our online message board where you can get connected, again, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to other people who are living with dementia and how they're choosing to take on this diagnosis. So as always, if you have any additional questions or looking for resources, you can email us at ALZ Talks, that's ALZ Talks @alz.org. Thank you so much for joining, and enjoy the rest of your day.